Guys, this is Joel Patterson. This is my case study for Mod 8 in EDL 853. Just starting off, we've got a quick summary of our case. This case involves a student named Carl. He's a third grade student in the Fulton County School District who's having some trouble with his behaviors. They've recently shifted from more self-abuse type issues to aggression towards some of the adults in his building. Carl's general education teacher, Miss Nancy Taylor, thinks that most of his needs should be able to be met outside of her room. And she's starting to fear for her safety, so she wants him out of her room. So Miss Taylor goes to Miss Green, a first-year SPED teacher, and asks for her to basically fix this for her. And so she's crafted a new IEP with the help of a SPED coordinator, the district SPED coordinator, and they've set up an IEP. Followed all due process in the whole thing, and they have got a new IEP going for Carl, where he can be pulled from the classroom when his behavior begins to escalate. At the end of the meeting, though, I think all parties are still frustrated. The Carl's parents, Miss Taylor, Miss Green, everyone kind of leaves there just a little bit upset, and Carl is still not really receiving the support that he needs. Category 1 are problem identification and analysis. So what do we know already? First off, we know that Carl is a third grade student at the Fulton County School District who's having some trouble with his behavior. We're 6 weeks into the school year and already needing a change to his IEP. Academically, Carl is doing really well. He's right there with his peers, and he doesn't qualify for full-time services for his behavior needs either. His parents have just gone through a bitter divorce, and so his behavior problem has kind of shifted from self-abuse to aggression. He's been caught throwing a pencil at Miss Taylor and rocks at several other students from the school, or teachers, I should say, from the school bus. Carl also has 2 older siblings in middle school that are also receiving emotional services. Miss Green, Miss Taylor, I should say, his gen ed classroom teacher thinks that his needs can be met outside of the room, and she's starting to fear for her safety and thinks that eventually it will be other students' safety that's going to be at risk as well. So Miss Green, who, like I said, is in her first year teaching, she's doing a great job as a first-year teacher in a district that is, limited with their resources, kind of coming up with new ideas for the new IEP, using the proper channels to do that as well. The IEP meeting has occurred to change the goals and objectives for Carl, and his parents are there and they sign off, but they are arguing throughout the majority of the meeting, and Carl's needs are still unmet, and there's a breakdown in communication definitely between SPED and general education. So what do we need to know? Well, first and foremost, I was curious what Carl's other behaviors were when on the past IEP, what triggered his actions there, what consequences had been used, and have parents been notified throughout this whole thing where if there were behavior problems coming, they should have had some communication before getting into this new IEP meeting. Next, I'm curious what Miss Taylor has tried already in her classroom. It seems like she was quick to go to Miss Green and say, hey, I want this student out of my room, but she really should have tried a few different strategies in her room before taking that next step, whether that's going to Mrs. Green or even to the past SPED teacher for different ideas. It doesn't sound like there's much of a positive relationship there either, so I'm curious what steps have been taken there. And then again, on communication, are parents informed? Do they know what's going on with Carl? On resources, I'm curious what resources would be available to the family, whether that's free or reduced lunch programs. We have a back snack program at our school where we provide snacks that could be a way to meet some of Carl's needs. Our counselors, social workers could also be providing additional support and extra resources outside of school, so I didn't know if those were available here as well. For Carl, I think he is kind of needing some adult role models, some peer groups that he could work with, possibly our like a lunch buddies program, or after school programs like Boy Scouts or art class, STEAM, or Bricks, which is building different things with Legos. what resources are available to Miss Taylor so that she can meet the needs of her class, whether that's this year or in future years. She's going to need some strategies. And then I was curious on collaboration. It doesn't sound like there's a great relationship between general ed and SPED, so I was curious if there was any meeting time for them to discuss students that are receiving services. And then lastly, is there an SEL curriculum that's being used to teach students in the building about their emotional needs and how to regulate those behaviors? So the problems, I've broken this into three parts. First and foremost, Carl's needs are being unmet, both at school and at home. His family is stretched thin, particularly his mother. She's working 50 hours a week, barely making ends meet. So Carl is kind of, and his siblings are being pushed onto the back burner because his mom is kind of just consumed with life right now. Positive role models are non-existent in Carl's life, so that's another big issue there, is he doesn't really have anyone to look up to. And then just the strategies, he's lacking strategies for how to support those behavior emotions. He doesn't know how to regulate those emotions right now. Another huge problem in this case is just communication and collaboration between Gen Ed and SPED. It's not there. Miss Taylor doesn't seem to have much of a desire to go out of her comfort zone to help Carl. So there needs to be more collaboration going on so she can feel better prepared to do that. There was really not a whole lot of communication on the crafting of the new IEP. Sounds like Miss Green did the bulk of the work, talked with the SPED coordinator, but never really used any input from family or Miss Taylor. And that's going to help get Miss Green off of her back, but that's going to lessen her effectiveness with other students in the building. And then lastly, just the parents are frustrated. They need support. Police have been called out to handle arguments at their home, but it doesn't sound like there's been much follow-up with counselors or social workers in that regard there. And then the parents just really haven't seen any, that I read anyway, positive communication. They've had 3 children with, emotional needs, and they're probably just feeling a little beat down from all the negative communication. So we need to flip that. Category 2, what's the plan of action? Appropriate strategies for implementation. So I've broken this into 3 parts. Services need to be provided to Carl and his family. Staff schedules are going to need to be adjusted to allow for collaboration time and PD. And then we need to increase the communication with family and school. So we need to provide for Carl's family access to free or reduced lunch, snacks, school supplies, clothing if needed. We need to utilize our counselor and social worker to kind of lessen the burden at home to, help this family out. They are sinking and they need our help. So whether that's through counseling with them or getting them access to counselors through the city, the state, tips, techniques, zones of regulation, breathing techniques are just a few that I listed. And then extracurricular things that Carl could be doing to have some positive role models in his life. As far as schedules, whether it's weekly or biweekly, we've got to get the 2 classrooms, the Gen Ed and SPED classrooms, working together so they can really talk about the needs of the students and what is working, what's not working. And if IEPs need to be changed, we should get documentation or data as we're working through an IEP. And when we collaborate, we can look at that data and see what needs to change. We also need to see what other resources we can pull in from the district, whether that's a school psychologist, a social worker, or possibly an SEL curriculum for social emotional needs. Communication, like I said on the last slide, I think this family is just getting beat down with all the negatives. So we need to flip that and start making a bridge of communication, whether that's on a daily or a weekly basis. A daily way that we could do it would be through a check-in, check-out form. We could send messages or a phone call on a weekly basis if that would be easier. We can add SEL tips in our weekly newsletter, so parents are getting that information on ways to kind of handle the same behaviors outside of school as well. And we need to follow up on the new IEP. The parents need to know whether it's working and what we're doing to try to help Carl. Category 3, resolving issues by promoting success of all students. So resolving this issue, we will help the personal well-being of every student by providing available resources, collaboration time, and increasing communication. So By giving these resources to Carl and his family, we could meet some of those basic needs that Carl has. Sounds like with mom's work schedule, and just how stressed they are, that maybe some meals are being missed. Maybe he's not getting breakfast before he comes to school, so we can provide some snacks to meet that need. And then just through those extracurricular activities, we can get that positive role model in Carl's life. Collaboration time between Gen Ed and SPED staff. This would be a better way of giving Gen Ed teachers strategies, tips, techniques to use kind of in their teaching toolbox, so they can handle some of these needs in the Gen Ed classroom before they're coming to the SPED room, or teachers like Ms. Taylor are coming to say, hey, I need this student out of my class. And it'll also give us a chance to track the data that's being taken on the IEP and see if it's effective or not. Increasing communication between school and home. This is a big one. The family, they are a part of the team and part of our, what we're trying to do for Carl here. So they need extra strategies that they can use outside of school. We can't just assume they know how to handle these, and that Carl will be miraculously cured of all of these behavior problems. They need to know what we're doing at school, so we need to provide that to them. What was I thinking, feeling, and valuing? So thinking, I think in a lot of ways this school has failed Carl, specifically Miss Taylor. I think Miss Green did a really nice job of trying to help Miss Taylor and help Carl, but Miss Taylor didn't really want to get much out of her comfort zone to help Carl. She just wanted him out of there. Resources that may or may not be available in this district weren't even known until it was too late. And then I think staff within this district, because it can't be just Ms. Taylor who's taught for 10 years, I think a lot of the staff in this district probably need additional professional development on handling these types of behaviors. My biggest feeling in this case study was just sadness for Carl and his family. Sounds like their life is just piling up on them, and lots of stress there for the family. And so the kids are pushed to the back burner and kind of missing part of their childhood here. Also, just the fact that services, we weren't more proactive in providing services until it was, the problem had gotten to a head here. And then Carl just needs some positive role models. His parents are going through a lot right now with the divorce and lots of extra hours at work, and the siblings are dealing with their own issues. So Carl is in dire need of some positive role models in his life. What was I valuing? Really just appreciative for the district that I'm in. I feel like when we've had issues similar to this, we've had a lot of resources and people in our building that we can kind of get in and help us with this type of an issue. And we do have that collaboration time with other SPED staff to kind of talk about these students on a more regular basis before problems blow up on us. Unresolved open issues in this case. Are Carl's behaviors improving with this new IEP? We should be able to identify this through data collection. Hopefully we can identify what some of these triggers are for him, and then we can start pulling in additional resources based on what those triggers may be. And if it's not working, we should still also have that documentation to show that what we've been doing to try to meet Carl's needs. What supports are being used to teach all students? Carl needs these strategies, so I'm guessing a lot of students in the building do as well. So I think a social emotional learning curriculum could be helpful to help students within this whole building and district, really. By doing this, you're teaching it across the entire school, all ages. It's a common language, and it'll give those kids that toolbox of different strategies to handle their behaviors. Lastly, what preemptive measures are being used in the Gen Ed classroom to support all learners? Is there a check-in, check-out system? Is there a positive behavior support system, not using clip charts or negative, behavior plans? We need to build those positive relationships. Do students have a way to earn rewards for their good choices, not just consequences for what they're doing bad? They need to have things that they can work towards. Okay, category 5, component 1. How did you as the educational leader promote academic success? So with the help of Ms. Green, there was a new IEP that was set in place where Carl could be removed from the classroom and return when he's calm, which is going to help provide a better environment for the rest of the students in that room. By adding in SEL tips into our newsletter, we're communicating with all families different strategies to use at home to regulate behaviors. We're also adding collaboration time between gen ed and special ed staff to gain kind of tips, techniques